Thank you, Mrs. Intveld. Mr. Albrecht.
Thank you very much, Chair, and also one thank you to the rapporteur who has presented a very good starting point for conclusions for our inquiry here in the European Parliament. It's now 6 months ago that the revelations of Edward Snowden showed us the ongoing meltdown of rule of law and the fundamental right to privacy and data protection, which is actually a human right in Europe. And I think it's very important to say that it's not this meltdown is not taking place because of Edward Snowden, and it's not taking place only since then. It's taking place because of the activities and the measures and legislations in place by our own governments. And Mr. Snowden has revealed it with great courage, and I think that we, first of all, should say this clearly in our report, and we should also call clearly for him to be acknowledged as what he is, a whistleblower, blowing the whistle on ongoing infringements, heavy infringements to the fundamental rights of all European citizens. And I think that should be worth a secure stay in a European member state so that we can also hear him directly and his information. Secondly, I think that the points which have been made by the rapporteur and also by the shadows on the importance of European data protection legislation and the framework agreement between the European Union and the United States to better protect the privacy and data protection rights of European citizens is central as a conclusion to this inquiry. It's important that our citizens get the control about their personal data. That's the best protection we can give them. But also, of course, we need control and oversight. And that means, I think, not only some blurry oversight, but clear parliamentary oversight, not only on the side of the USA, also here in the European Union. In our inquiry, we saw clearly that there is ongoing activity of our own European intelligence services, either on cooperation with the NSA or on their own, which is doing massive surveillance on our own citizens. And it should be clear that there's effective control in place. No control, by the way, is in place on the level of the European Union, because there's still the exclusion of national security completely. But we have heard also representatives of national parliaments, and I haven't had the impression that there is effective control in place on the national level. So we should fix that, and there should be rules on the cooperation and the work of intelligence services in Europe, European Union rules. So I think we should also draw that conclusion. By the way, there's also obviously no enforcement by police authorities or other authorities, competent authorities, cybersecurity or data protection authorities, when it comes to the cyber attacks launched by third states authorities or third state companies or companies based here in Europe on the servers and systems of telecommunications providers. I don't see why this is happening. Europol has again and again claimed that obviously there's no request by any national authority on the investigation even of these cyber attacks. I think this is ridiculous. That's a scandal. We have a lack of law enforcement, a huge lack of law enforcement, and we just passed our own cybercrime rules recently. We should be keen on enforcing it, and that should be part of our conclusions. And then let me say that this, of course, links also to the systems and to the security of systems. And Sophie Infeld just mentioned that this is a central part of liability, for example, for systems which provide the adequate safeguards we need in a digitalized society. I think that rather than breaking or subsidizing the breach of encryption and subsidizing surveillance measures more and more, we should invest in encryption powers, in anonymization systems, because we need to strengthen citizens and consumers to protect themselves if they want to communicate in private. Private communication, by the way, is also a human right. We should insist on that to be enforced, not only here in Europe, but also globally, that's clear. But we should walk ahead as a positive example, and I read with very much happiness that there's a clear reference to the necessity to end up with blanket retention of personal data without suspicion. But then please, let's spell out in detail that this means we need to talk about the data retention directive in the European Union, and we need to talk about those politicians still saying that the vast retention of passenger name records will solve our security problems. That's not the case. And anyway, it's not proportionate. It's blanket retention and breach of our fundamental rights. Last but not least, let me say that I think we really need to draw a line of what is acceptable to draw for either control or oversight of us all in societies when it comes to data, when it comes to communication. And we need to draw clear lines what is not acceptable, and we also need to work on effective oversight mechanisms. And we need to do that as a European Parliament, no matter what our governments say, because obviously since 6 months they are not in the position and not capable to deal with these revelations properly, to draw the conclusions which we need. The European citizens are looking at this House, and there's elections coming up in May, and we want them to see that this House makes a difference. So please, let's go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Albrecht. Mrs. Ernst.